I'd like to call to order the October 18th, 2021 meeting of the Lowell Historic Board. Under public hearings, our first item is DLHD-22-10, 78 Middlesex Street. The application for a historic permit in the downtown Lowell Historic District by 78 to 80 Middlesex Street LLC for exterior rehabilitation pursuant to the Lowell Historic District Act. Would the applicant or the representatives like to introduce themselves and present the application?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. For the record, my name is John Geary of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, 78-80 Middlesex Street. With us tonight is Justin Mcfaulin, the principal of 78-80 Middlesex Street. It should be noted that Justin is also the developer of 160 Middlesex Street, which is a new construction 5-story mixed-use building about a block away from this building, which is well underway. Justin had to go through the same process for that building, so he's familiar with the process. We also have Alex Yoon of Monty French Design Studios. Alex is the architect on the project. So we're here before you tonight seeking a historic permit for the property owned by the applicant at 78 Middlesex Street. 78 Middlesex Street, as you probably all know, is the site of the Oddfellows building. It was destroyed by a fire back in 1948 and rebuilt at some point after that. The most recent use of the property was that of the Club Fitness Center, which was a fitness center that operated at this site for many years, but has been vacant and in disrepair for the last several years. The applicant proposes to complete the renovation restoration of the interior exterior of the building in order to house 26 residential units, which will be a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. The applicant is also proposing to repurpose the currently paved area on the west side of the property into a fenced-in pocket park that will have a walking path, benches, and green space for use of the tenants of this property. The total cost estimate for the redevelopment of this property is in excess of $4 million. Justin and Alex have been working closely with Steve with regard to the historical aspects of this redevelopment, and we feel we have a design that meets the standards for issuance of the historic permit. So at this point, I'll hand the meeting off to Alex, who will go through the design with the board, and then we're happy to answer any questions of the board. Alex?
Good evening. Thanks, John. Hello. Again, my name is Alex Yoon. I'm an architect at Monty French Design Studio. It's my pleasure to be working on this project with the team and to be presenting this to you. I will be sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, just a little bit primer on the existing conditions. I'm sure the board is well aware of the site and its conditions as well as context, but just to go through it, we're right near downtown, just a stone's throw away from Central Street. You can see right across the street from the early garage. As John mentioned earlier, there was formerly the site of the Oddfellows building, burned down more than 50, 70 years ago now, and has been since replaced with this 3-story commercial structure that's been vacant, as previously mentioned again. You can see that there's a good mixture of existing party wall brick on the sides and the rear, as well as a new masonry exterior wall of the 3-story commercial. The existing conditions on the inside, we believe, are the original foundations to the Oddfellows building, as well as a mixture of brick, load-bearing brick, steel, and wood infill. So it's currently just a hodgepodge of structural systems in the building currently. Just some context. Just to go through, we are in the urban area in the downtown zoning area for Lowell. And then, as we've mentioned, this is in the historic district, but it's a non-contributing building, given that it was a building built in the 70s without any regard for the existing building before it. Some more context. 78 Middlesex is the tan building in the background on the left, just adjacent to 74 Middlesex, and then the early garages across the street. This stretch is a bit eclectic. You can see the start of the more historic area just 2 doors down from us, but as you go down the street, we have the vacant lot that we also own, as well as the single-story commercial building next to that. And so with the proposed renovation, we are proposing to keep the existing 3-story structure and completely gut renovate and rehab the structure to a new facade. We are proposing to also landscape the current paved lot into a open space and landscaped open space for the tenants with some utility areas in the back for loading, trash, and transformer areas. We are also proposing to cut a new open air atrium into the middle of the building. The building is about 90 feet by 90 feet square, quite deep, good for a commercial space, not so great in terms of getting light into the darkest spaces for units and for residents. And so we've proposed to cut a rectangular hole down all the way down to grade so that we can get natural daylighting into the deepest part of the site and the existing building. It'll provide natural daylighting for the units, as well as provide a small little open space just as you enter the lobby from Middlesex Street, you see here. What we're also proposing is that there is an existing pool that was part of the Club Fitness in the basement, and we are proposing to add a new skylight that would let daylight in from this new atrium down into the basement. This is a sketch of a proposed landscape that has a number of revisions in coordination with DPD and Steve. We originally had the fence setback 10 feet, but in discussion with Steve Stoll and DPD, I think the recommendation was that the fence be brought back so that it is coplanar and aligning with the front of the existing building, so that the fence continues the line of the street wall along the sidewalk of Middlesex Street. We are proposing to fence the entirety of the landscape with an open metal picket fence. It's a private use for the residents with a variety of, on the next page, with a variety of low-lying hedge bushes to line the perimeter. And we are also proposing in the revised sketch to put a tree in the bottom right corner of this image, but I believe it's the northwest corner of this landscape plan to provide some shade, a shade tree at the sidewalk. So just to quickly go through the plans, the proposed basement, we are proposing to keep the pool and renovate the existing area to be amenity space with a bathing and lounge area surrounding the pool, a gym fitness area to the north of the page, and then with all the changing and showering facilities that you need. We're also proposing per unit tenant storage down in the basement that will also accommodate bikes in lieu of a dedicated bike room that not all tenants would use. We're proposing just to provide each tenant with a separate space, a locker, a large locker, as you will. Going back to the ground floor, just zooming into the plan, we propose that you come in to the building through the center of the building into a large lobby that looks straight into the open space and the atrium of the new courtyard. And on the ground floor, we have 8 units lining the perimeter. And then we have the main elevator and stair lobby in the deepest part of the building, centrally located. On the upper floors, it's more or less the same plan, except the lobby has now been replaced with another unit. And again, you can see the atrium providing a lot of daylight for these units in the deepest part of the building. On the roof, we do not have, at this point, specific rooftop mechanical equipment, but based on previous projects that we've done of similar size, this is the amount of rooftop mechanical equipment that we suspect will be needed. We're proposing again to put it in the middle of the building. And I think on the next page, we did a sightline study. Given apologies, it's hard to see, but where I'm circling with my mouse is where the 2 rows of outdoor condenser units are located. And then to the left, we have Middlesex Street. Across the street, 99 Middlesex, we have a person with the sightline view of the parapet of the proposed 78 Middlesex, as well as another person standing in the back of the alley looking up at the back, at the rear of our building again. And so from the street, there should be no views of the proposed rooftop mechanical equipment. So with the existing 3-story structure, there are some strong bones, some lines within the existing structure that we must keep. It obviously is not the Oddfellows building, and so we are not proposing to build and design a traditional historic building, but we hope that what we propose is a modern, contemporary piece of the fabric, as you will, that hopefully will fit into the downtown character. So we are proposing to completely rehab the exterior along the street wall of 78 Middlesex with a strong new brick frame that provides some rhythm and order to the building. And then inset from that, we have large format cementitious panels that provide the backdrop, as well as some large windows that we propose are, the company is called Amberline, but they're a European thermally broken tilt turn product and system that's very efficient and quite insulating. And so on the ground floor, we've actually stepped back the first floor wall 5 feet so that on each floor, if I can go back, on the bottom half of this page, we've set back that front wall 5 feet, and we propose to put the same fencing that we have for the landscape across these deep wells along Middlesex Street, and then beyond that, we have a series of fixed planters that will provide some privacy, and so that these ground floor units have ample daylight and some screening from the street. And just proposed versus existing, you can see there's some strong bones of especially the outer perimeter walls, but we suspect that these pilasters here are structural as well, and so we are proposing to keep that and continue that that rhythm. This is a proposed elevation of that sidewall facing the landscape open space. We have engaged a structural engineer, but we have not yet done analysis of this load-bearing brick. This image represents the scope of what we hope to do with the size and the amount of openings for the windows for the units. But of course, once we once we get going with our team of consultants, with the approval of all the boards, we hope that we will do this study and get the windows right. We are proposing to keep this existing brick and cut new openings for these new units. Again, existing versus proposed, and you can see in this smaller image on the lower left, the existing party wall brick. And in the rear, it's the same condition, existing brick that we are again cutting new openings into. And another snapshot of the existing versus proposed with a photo of the alleyway. A rendering of the street wall. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't a historic building. It's non-contributing historic, and we aren't proposing to build something that is traditional. But we hope that with some modern building techniques and detailing, and with the order and structure of the fenestration and the brick, that we are proposing something that fits into the character of the downtown area. And again, you can see the new brick that we are proposing to create the frame of the building, and inset from that slightly are the large format cementitious panels. And then you can see the windows, as well as the 5-foot setback on the ground floor. And then at the entry, we propose some standard aluminum storefront glazing to provide a large expanse of glass for the lobby. Just looking at the corner of the proposed development, this image is outdated. We've since made those corrections to the landscape after we submitted this package, but this fence would be brought up right along the sidewalk, so that there's a continuous line of this picket black metal fence along the street wall. And you can see the scope of new openings that we propose along the existing brick wall. A little bit more about the courtyard. We are proposing to cut this new courtyard out from the existing floor plates. You can see on the left, we have the new proposed skylight that will look down into the pool, and to the right, we have a small outdoor space that is surrounded by hedged plantings to provide some privacy to the units that have windows out onto the courtyard. And some more images of the courtyard as well. And that the section you can see on the right is Middlesex Street. Again, right on the lot line with the existing facade, we have the new brick that we propose. Inset slightly are the large format panels with the windows, and then there's the 5-foot setback for the ground floor. And then in the middle of the building, you can see the new courtyard with the skylight, and then the pool area below. And that's the end of my presentation. I will turn it back to John.
Thank you, Alex. Great job. And I should also mention to the board that we have received approvals from the planning board for the site plan and issuance of the special permit. We received a variance from the zoning board of appeals for lack of off-street parking. So this historic permit is the last phase of the permitting process. We feel we meet the criteria. We've reviewed the proposed conditions that Steve has prepared, and we are agreeable to those conditions and request approval of the historic permit tonight. But we're happy to answer any questions of the board members.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. At this point, I'll open the floor to anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this application. Steve, do we have anyone on Zoom?
Alex, can I get the screen back?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't see anyone here.
Okay. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this proposal? Hearing none, I'll open it up for board questions. I'll see.
Hi, this question for Alex. So you mentioned I saw a picture of some of the original foundation. Was that from the former building? The historic building?
I believe so.
Yeah.
We have no documentation saying that it's existing, but given that this existing three-story structure was built in 1970 something, I believe, it's doubtful that they would have used a new granite foundation.
Right.
So it's likely that the granite foundation is the original foundation for the Oddfellows building.
Thank you.
I have a question about the 5-foot setbacks on the front. Will those be accessible to the unit owners? Can you go out, would that be outdoor space?
Yes, I think the way that we've planned it, one of those bays, I believe, is a door. And so, there isn't much space given the setback is 5 feet, and then we're proposing 2 feet of a planted raised planter to provide that hedge screening. So they'll have approximately 3 feet of outdoor space. And so it's more to provide the light and privacy, and they could open the doors so that it could expand the space, but it's not meant to be an occupiable space. It really kind of expands the interior space out.
Okay, and also, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see where the elevator is. And will that be visible? Will there be an elevator thing on top of the building?
That is a good question. Typically there is about a 5-foot overrun from the top of the elevator. But given that the third floor is, I believe, 13 feet tall, any sort of overrun is probably going to be very minimal, most likely 2 feet. But in the plan at the roof, there is a small box and there's a note called for elevator overrun. Sorry, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
This is the elevator. In plan, it's really kind of centered in the building, kind of 1/3 of the way in from the street. And so this is that's the elevator overrun. Given that this floor plate is so tall, I suspect that any sort of overrun is going to be 1 or 2 feet above. And I believe the elevator is bottom of the elevator is aligned with the courtyard wall. And so the elevators, if we were to cut a new section, is going to be somewhere there. And so even with, if this is say 5 feet tall, I don't believe it's will be visible from the street either.
Will the elevator abut the outdoor space? Will that be also a common patio on the roof?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Is there's going to be outdoor space on the roof?
No,
Oh, I thought.
no,
oh, I
the
thought-
roof. No, the roof is only for mechanical equipment.
Okay, okay. Then my question's
It's
relevant.
okay.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I just have a question regarding parking. I was looking at the layout and I wasn't seeing like accessible parking spaces. I'm not sure if you guys have plans for that.
There's no parking associated with this, with the redevelopment of this property whatsoever. We have received a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for relief from the requirement of off-street parking. This is except for the landscaped open space to the west side of the property, the building takes up most of the lot. We felt that open space to the west side of the property is much better used as open space for the tenants than it would be for the minimal parking that we would have got from it.
Thank you.
Anyone else have comments? I think overall this is a very successful adaptation of the existing structure. I think you've chosen materials and a facade pattern that really fits in well with the streetscape, but is also clearly contemporary. So I think this will be a really valuable addition to the district. And I appreciate the design you've taken with the care you've taken with the design to have it fit within our standards.
Thank you.
There's no further comment. I'm willing to entertain a motion.
I move to approve permit application D LHD 2210, 78 Middlesex Street. Upon the conditions as written in the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
I will now move on to the second item on our agenda under the public hearings for DLHD 22-11, 60 Fletcher Street, the Perkins Knowles Buildings. This is an application for a historic permit in the downtown Lowell Historic District by Kazanjian Enterprises for exterior rehabilitation pursuant to the Lowell Historic District Act. Again, would the applicant like to step forward and introduce yourself to present your application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, for the record, my name is John Geary of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Kazanjian Enterprises, Inc. And with us tonight are Alan Kazanjian and David Gray of Kazanjian Enterprises, the owner of the property at 60 Fletcher Street. Unfortunately, the architect, Mark Wilcox from Gavin and Sullivan, had a last-minute conflict and is unable to make it tonight. So we're going to have to move forward without him. In any event, we're here tonight seeking a special permit for the property owned by the applicant at 60 Fletcher Street. The property actually consists of 3 buildings, which are located in the downtown historic district. And as the chairman mentioned, the site of the former Perkins Knowles building, and most recently, the site of the McKittrick hardware store. Alan is proposing to reuse the building as a multi-tenant commercial space, which will consist of roughly 15,000 square feet of office space once completed. The anticipated investment into this property is in excess of $3 million. I'll just go through a quick summary of what we're planning on doing as far as the exterior for each building. So 60 Fletcher Street. We'll be repairing, repointing, and cleaning all the brick and riverstone walls as required. We'll be replacing windows with universal windows, restoring the new aluminum high energy efficient windows up to historic standards, replacing the existing storefront bay on Fletcher Street, replicating and repairing the former freight loading doors on the first and upper floors. New entrance, we're building a new entrance to the bank on Dutton Street. One of the tenants will be a local bank. Removing the existing mezzanine and leveling off the first floor, providing the core mechanicals for on each floor, and sandblasting the interior as approved by the board. There'll also be a new elevator tower between the buildings. There'll be the new parking lot to the rear of the building between 60 and 72 Fletcher Street, where they access the elevator lobby. 78 and 82 Fletcher Street will be doing the same to the exterior, repairing, repointing, and cleaning all brick as required, replacing all windows with the universal historic compliant windows, maintaining the Fletcher Street entrance for that building as is. And then on the 86 Fletcher Street building, we'll be rebuilding the rear brick wall. It's collapsed due to water damage. We'll be doing the same to the exterior, repairing, repointing, and cleaning all the brick as necessary. Rebuild the plank and beam floor due to water damage. Same for the roof. The roof has been severely damaged by water, so we'll be rebuilding that, sandblasting the interior as required, replacing the windows and doors to historic standards, and enclosing the former loading dock area as part of the building. So that's a general overview of what's going to be done to the exterior of the buildings. Steve's notes were pretty thorough description of the project. We've reviewed the proposed conditions that Steve has suggested, and we have no issues with those conditions. We feel we meet the criteria for issuance of the special permit. And I also would be remiss if I didn't take a minute to thank Steve for his help here guiding us through not only this project, but the 78 Middlesex Street. He's always a pleasure to deal with. He communicates very well, and that only helps the process, helps us get to this point and ultimately get these projects built so that it benefits the city. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have on this proposal and the request for the permit.
Thank you again for your presentation. I'd like to open it up to anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this application. Double check there's no one on Zoom to participate. Okay. And opening up the floor to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Hearing none, we can now move on to board questions and comments.
May I just like to note that we mentioned Universal Windows, that's the Universal company, has done a lot of the work on many of the buildings in Lowell. A lot of the ones you have, Jackson Street, so forth, have a Universal product in the historic replica. So that's what he's referring to. He mentions Universal.
Okay.
We'll see.
I have a question. I would like to ask a question about the windows. So it looks like that you're trying to keep the same structure, but turning basically wood to aluminum. You're looking at the same design of the window that is currently in the building and replacing it with something new. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Dave, can you elaborate on that? Is that?
Sure. We've been working with Maureen Kavanaugh from PAL Associates, and she's been helping us with the historic. We're also applying to the historic tax credits. So we've been working with her to do a submittal on the windows. We're pretty much at the last phase of approval of the window design, and we've been working with Mark Wilcox also, and with Universal in conjunction with Maureen, and we're just about at the final stage of the approval from the National Park Service on the window design. We are trying to keep up with what the original design that's there now.
There's quite a few very unusual windows there, so that's commendable.
Yes, I think that a lot of them, it's of course the buildings were built at different time frames. So as you see, the smaller buildings were a little bit newer than that, and even the 4-story had an addition added on to that at some point. So it's kind of a mesh of three different styles.
And you'll be keeping the existing granite?
Yes, we're gonna try to keep everything existing as is and keep just repoint it, the exterior brick and canal stone that's there now. Wash it, do some sandblasting to it, and just of course repoint it and just dress up the outside and clean it up.
One of the things to note on the windows here is that when the replacement is done like this, again, this is very similar to whether it's Renaissance in the River or Perkins or now Riverhawk Village or any of the news of Jackson Street Route in the Boot Mill. Everything within the masonry opening is removed, so that when the new aluminum replicas go in, the sill, the frame, trim, the sash, it all simulates the sight lines of the original windows. So you're not compressing the size of the windows by putting a frame within a frame. It keeps the same sight lines, the same glass. It's just in essence, they're giant 1/1 windows if they're double hung with the grids on the outside.
Mhm.
So again, this is pretty much the way a lot of the mills have been done over the years, even the most recent one. But that's just for background on how these sorts of windows are installed. The dimensions are as true as they can be to the existing windows. And the technology has actually gotten a lot better over the years. So, and the other day I was showing someone at a project down on Middlesex Street, and the person thought they were with windows. So no, those are all aluminum.
Yeah.
A little background on how these are installed.
And keeping with granite sills and headers and,
All of that
Just
remains.
getting inside.
The physical masonry wall opening remains.
Anyone else with questions?
yeah, so speaking of cleaning the brick, can you talk about your strategy for preserving the ghost sign that's there?
Right now, we're working with a few different contractors to come up with a plan for that. The Perkins machine, the McKittrick sign is industrial supply sign is going to be sandblasted and washed off. Is that the sign you're talking about? Or the
No, I'm
Perkins?
worried about the Perkins.
The Perkins?
Sign. Mhm.
That's we're still working on a plan to how we're gonna do that.
I would just say, I guess I should put this in the form of the question, but to me personally, we've had some really sad ghost sign losses in the last couple of years in Lowell, and that's really important to me that we don't lose things that make buildings recognizable and iconic. So to me personally, keeping that existing signage would be really important.
Like I said, we're gonna do our best that we, to abide by these conditions that were, put on and do what we can to work with Steve and come up with the design and review of the work we're gonna do there to do what we can to preserve that.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing, I think working with Steve closely, maybe doing some test panels before a whole scale repair is done, just to make sure that we're aware of the impacts of the cleaning techniques that are proposed and the repointing and all those other measures, so that we're not doing some damage that's unanticipated.
Sure, we'll definitely sit with Steve. We've worked with Steve a lot in the past on different projects, and we'll definitely make sure that we meet with him and show him, do the submittals on how we're gonna go about the procedures.
And Mr. Chairman, if you would like to make that a condition of the approval, that's, acceptable to the applicant.
Okay, yeah, I do see that there is some language in the recommended motion right now, so.
Okay.
Okay,
The other thing too is you'll have another layer of oversight tax credits at the federal and state level in the form of Maureen Cavanaugh from Public Archaeology Lab and the Preservation Consultant. So I, for one, also agree on the Perkins machine that's signed. So we need to do our best to maintain that in place.
How old is the McKittrick Industrial Supply painted sign?
I don't think they're painted. I think they're wall panel signs. I don't believe they're painted, and maybe David can clarify that. I thought they were wall panel signs, but I'm like, up there.
Okay.
But we'll double check that
Yeah.
to be sure.
Yeah, I
thought-
can't confirm that. I'm not sure if it's painted or if it's a panel.
I think it's a panel, but we can double check that.
I'm
Okay,
looking at it on Google Maps now, and I think there's actually two signs, and I think one side is painted, the McKittrick, one side is painted and one is a panel. Unless my eyes are fooling me here.
Okay, and the space between the main building and the two-story building, I did see that there was a remnant of a panel sign that had fallen onto the ground in that little alley area, but I thought that which is that bottom facade facing at the south?
Here, and then there's this other one.
It seems to me that the south facade is a painted one that you can see as you approach from the
Mhm.
Thorndike Street.
Just there.
No, yeah, that one I think was a metal panel sign,
Yeah.
but on the
The only other one
opposite,
was the tall one, I think, the tough one. That one?
yeah, that one, I thought that one was painted, but is that the one you have on your?
I don't know.
Yeah, it looked painted to me.
I thought it was painted, but I could be wrong. We'll have to
Yeah,
double check that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do we know what the age of that painted sign is on the south facade? Just wondering whether that's technically part of the, if it's been determined a current defining feature or not.
1950s, 60s. In fact, it was repainted. It was there.
Mhm,
Reinstalled stuff in the last iteration several years ago.
mhm.
So it's not that old of a sign.
Are there windows proposed where that painted sign is located on the fourth floor as part of the rehabilitation of the building? Or is that going to remain a blank wall?
It's gonna be, we made a blank wall there. I think there may be some discussion about some signage later on for a tenant. But that would all have to be reviewed with Steve.
Something to note to the architect in review with our historic architect as far as accessibility. On page A 9.2, there's a door in question D10. And it has to do with clearance to the ramp for egress.
LC.
Yeah, A92.2, door D10.
What was the question on it?
It wasn't a question, it's just something to note, passing over with my historic architect at the park. He noted door D10 and had a question about the egress to be sure that it was accessible, that there was enough space there to be accessible. So just maybe make a note to the architect to,
D10 on the interior.
yeah. Mhm. First floor.
This area right here, I guess, David.
I'll check that with Mark.
Okay, and also door D69 on A 9.3. David wrote down 18-inch minimum there, just to check for that. And also the railings, if there's railing extensions on the drawing at the bottom. And that was it to note. Thank you. Third one.
Steve, could you pull up the floor plan for either the third or fourth floor?
There's both of them there. How's that?
That's helpful, yeah. I had one question about the elevator tower. Obviously, on the first and second floors, it's within the existing building structure, so it's really not visible. But the third and fourth levels of that tower are certainly visible from one side of the building. And I just had a question whether there might be a way to make the footprint of that tower smaller to reduce its mass as viewed from the exterior. I see you have there's the elevator itself, but then there's a large lobby in front of it, with windows that kind of brings attention to this new contemporary element. I'm just wondering whether there might be options for reducing the size of the lobby area to reduce the massing on the exterior on the third and fourth floors.
Like, I'll bring that up to him. We'd just assume not doing it if we didn't need to. So I'd run that by Mark. If we don't need it, you know, to enclose that area there. So
Now,
but I'll
that's-
definitely, I'll check
I
with
wasn't
them.
sure
on
if
that.
there's a code requirement for the size of a lot of a lobby at an elevator or not, but anything you could do there to reduce that mass would certainly help to minimize the visual impact of it.
Sure.
Anyone else with questions or comments from the applicant? You know, overall, I think that this is a long-awaited project to revitalize this building. It's really visible as you come in from down Thorndike Street, and will really, with all the attention being brought to that area with the road work and the bridge work, having this work done in concert with that will really be part of this effort to bring this part of the city back to life. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this rehab accomplished on the road.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting it underway.
Glad to hear you taking advantage of the tax credit programs as well.
Yes, definitely.
I think this whole neighborhood is going through a transformation right now with, you know, with this project. There is project across the street, and I know of a few other projects on Fletcher and Rock Street, which are going to really enhance the character of this neighborhood and that gateway running right through the city.
Yep. Okay. Again, I'm open to hearing a vote or motion if there are no further questions.
I will make a motion to approve this project with the recommended conditions listed in the memo. A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you all
much.
for your time.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda. We will now move on to other business. The first item under other business is enforcement violations update. Steve, do you have anything you want to bring to our attention under that?
Really what's there is the, we'll call it the process. that
Right.
We've been thinking of, you know, streamlining a bit more. So you have submitted tonight the existing and the proposed that Jeffrey took a look at, and also George in his capacity as the chamber rep, and then now it's basically everyone else's opportunity to take a crack at it and see if there's anything else here they might want to take a look at. It would be nice to get this, you know, in place, because, you know, you don't want to send letters under one process and then have it juxtaposed with a new process, and there are different realms, so to speak. So it's there for review and comment and hopefully adoption.
Is that something that we would be able to vote on tonight, Steve, or would we need to make it a formal part of the future
No,
agenda?
it's just a simple change, edit to the existing process.
Yeah, just for some further background, yeah, we did hear some feedback in some of the earlier meetings about some interest in addressing our violations policy and making it a little more streamlined, and trying to quicken up the process where we might be able to bring someone in to a hearing to report on why they're not addressing the issue, and to kind of take people to task if they are not responding to Steve's outreach in the early stages. And this still does provide a number of steps for us and opportunities for compliance to occur. We basically just eliminated one letter and I think one hearing from the process, so that we can kind of cut to the chase a little more quickly overall.
Mhm.
But there's plenty of opportunities for a friendly interaction to happen with Steve, and for us to give them plenty of opportunities to take action before we have to take the step of bringing them in for a hearing and potentially instituting fines. So I think it's a good balance of allowing plenty of time for compliance, but also giving us the opportunity to take steps when necessary.
I'd also know it's also in juxtaposition, you may have seen this in the notes on a violation, the field log sheet, let's say, that keeps track of, who I spoke with, I met with Joe, I met with Mary, whatever it is. And also, somehow we've been able to, I think, almost resurrect an old violation template database. So it goes along with the permitting database that I thought was long ago corrupted, I noted in the notes as well. So hopefully, combined with the streamlined process, combined with those new tools that will help stay on top of some of these things, much more regularly. And what I'll probably do is draft like a generic language for each of the steps at some point, just so everyone sees that. So what this will do is the request for compliance will only be sent, I go to Joe's business, I speak with Joe. If nothing happens, maybe I'll stop by and see him again, but then the letter goes out with the request. Differences, in addition to mentioning things we can help you with, it's also going to mention right off the bat the fines legal action, which generally didn't occur until after the board voted to allow that to happen. Generally, I found through the years, when they see that, they tend to respond a lot quicker. So, you're nice a little bit, and then it's, okay, here's what can happen legally if you don't, comply. And ultimately, they still can seek relief in front of the board, and, if they don't comply. So, but, and everything else remains in place, but it really tightens up that early part of the process, I think, quite a bit.
Do you know how much time it'll shave?
I can do a double check on how much time it shaves off, but it's at least a good month and a half.
Yeah, but I think by limiting one hearing, it certainly takes at least a month off of it.
Yeah. And we consolidated the initial correspondence, so that even further compresses it. The board has actually, in the past, years ago, streamlined this already. It used to be, it says 7 days on the existing, that used to be 30 days.
Really?
It was drawn out so far, so it's already been compressed quite a bit. And I think doing this route even, it tightens it up even more, and it can always be revisited if we don't think it's, it's the board's broad, purview to do this sort of policy.
Can you speak to the first part where, okay, the Lowell Historic Board Administrator or any other person delegated by Lowell Historic Board, who would that be? And or like, what's the frequency for,
That's when we had staff.
say,
That's when the
going
assistant,
walking around?
no, that's when the assistant administrator did some of the violation stuff years ago.
Okay.
So he or she, in this case, it was always a she would go out, report, we would get, that's when we had
Yeah.
staff. Now it's just me, so, it's not a big deal to do it this way. It's just in there in case, we ever have staff again, or,
Yeah,
You
so
know,
now
staff
it's just you and
responsibility.
you're out weekly, just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or it's even up to all of you if you see
Yeah,
something.
if we
I know
see
Christine
something
saw-
and,
Christine's seen a couple of things. I
Yeah.
know that, Jim, you've seen things that you've let me know, or, hey,
Okay.
what's going on over there? So,
okay,
you all are also, the ones who are around here more regularly, bring the eyes and ears too.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
well, I think other people from the community who know who we are, or, can walk into City Hall and say the same.
Well, and that's
Sure
the
you
thing
get
too.
that.
Sometimes, like, if you've seen on, I may do an active link on this on the enforcement page on the website. It says report a violation. Well, sometimes, this happens with building code issues, health code issues. People report things. It doesn't mean you know who these people are. Sometimes it's anonymous. Sometimes they say, hey, I really
Right.
don't want to, but I've noticed this. And, it'll note who reported by. community, reported by, it's not gonna say, if the board member, it'll say reported by board member. You know, that kind of thing. If it's reported by staff, it knows staff.
That's a good process.
So assuming we just need a simple motion to adopt this, Steve? Vote.
That would be great if you can.
I'll make a motion to adopt the updated violation, procedures for potential violation of the Lowell Historic Board process.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passed.
Great, thank
you
you
all.
very much.
Thanks
That's
for
great.
working on that. Yeah, good job, Steve. Yeah.
No, Jeffrey, I got it out to Jeffrey and George.
George helps. Yep.
Good job, Jeffrey.
Good team effort.
Good job, all of that.
Well, and it was good that, George took a guy, he didn't really have any comment, but it's always good, like, each of you represent a different entity. He represents the chamber, which is the business group. So what do you think? And that's, that seemed to work okay. Great. Everything else in here is pretty much informational for the record. If anyone, John Geary would have had 2 more projects tonight. He would have been the ringmaster for 4.
Wow.
But, 62 Gorham and 80 Gorham, those are probably on the November agenda, only because the applicant for that, there were a few minor things on both of those projects. Window configuration, a few other clarifying items, details that were a little inconsistent between renderings and elevations. And he didn't want to push his team too hard because he was coming up to the planning and zoning. In fact, they're down there tonight. John's getting onto the planning board meeting right after this to get the approval on those there. So that's why he figured, it's far enough along to do it in November. And I mean, those are 2 simple rehabs with a dormer addition and an L in the back. And, so those will be on the agenda coming up in November. 2 very, very important buildings. It's actually kind of exciting. I was talking with, I bumped into Carrie and her husband and someone else the other night downtown, and it's just talking about what's going on in that whole Middlesex Street area. The 2 buildings in Gorham, the building you all just approved on 78, 160 Middlesex is going up with terracotta veneer, and he's thrilled with how that's happening. Suggestions we had to recess where it would have been windows, but it was just solid panel. That relief is just giving it enough definition to make it really hum. And I've also met with a potential new owner of 150 Middlesex Street, which is it's flanked by the new building, and the one to the left that's going to rehab now. And so he's looking at doing units, and they run a pitching to help with the zoning and the planning people too. So that plus the city's RFP is out for the restaurant space and the parking garage. And the deli seems to be doing fantastic down there as well. So there are a lot of exciting things happening in that corridor in the immediate vicinity right now. The stained glass app is in. The Preservation Committee. Roy, Christine. You both have a lot to sift through on those, but it's exciting, the projects that have come in, and that the money is available to even consider things like this.
Yeah.
But it got in, and I also provided comment and backup to several of the other ones. The First Baptist Church, the LTFC's Middle Street's proposed project by Middlesex. So, there's also certain things that by the regulations I have to provide that will clarify this, do that. But, when they call for info, it was there for them too, even though they're competing against our stained glass application. Anyway.
Great, yeah, it looks like you've been really busy this first, Steve, so appreciate all your work. Any other comments or questions for Steve before we wrap it up? The motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. I second.
You're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.